Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. And remember, if you find yourself sitting on a comma in your life, you can also talk to me without a microphone. To explore coaching with me and getting off the comma in your own life, check out my information and book a call with me at offthecomma.com. And I'm also doing something different. I'm curating my own sponsor community, local businesses and professionals who I handpick and who align with our vision here. Be sure to check them out, learn more about them on my website and my YouTube channel. In the meantime, let's get into this week's conversation. And we are back with another exciting episode of Off the Comma. It's, as I say frequently, it's such a privilege to be here and be witness to other people's stories about their experience with being on a comma and getting off the comma. This week is no exception. Also, this week, I'm getting to meet someone who we're connected through a shared acquaintance, and that's how we came to be connected for this podcast. But Christopher LaFleur, I have not met him yet, and so I'm looking forward to meeting him through his story on today's podcast episode. And with that, I'm going to jump right in and not ramble like I often do. Christopher, thank you for coming to the podcast. Thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Why don't you start by telling us how would you like to be known? And then you could share anything else you'd like for us to know about you.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning. So nice to share Sunday morning with you. And thanks for having me. I'd like to be known as someone who is passionate about connecting communities and people. I'd like to be known as somebody who's passionate about uplifting voices and building bridges. Um, I'd like to be known as somebody who spreads joy and makes a difference. Some things about me: I am a professional visual fine artist. I am an event producer. So events ranging in size from a very beautiful dinner party all the way up to public festivals and outdoor concert type things. I also work for a nonprofit, so I handle PR, I handle marketing, donor management. I'm really good. My job is I'm the money man. I'm really good at asking people for money for a cause and getting it. So I would say my life, if there was one phrase I could use to describe my life, would be purpose driven.
I sense a theme here too in what you're sharing with us and how you're describing yourself, because it's not just you that I'm hearing in what you're describing, but it's also others, through whether it's, as you said, connecting other people or being involved with organizations that support and uplift other people. Or I sense that even in your art, it's the impact on other people. So what's the significance of the other people in this equation that's Christopher?
Well, I mean, like all of us, right? We are a human species. We're a group. So there really isn't any you without us. And I really strongly, firmly believe in the us part of that equation. Where do other people factor into that equation is when I wake up in the morning, there's always something that needs done. There's always something that needs doing. There's someone who needs helping. It's easy to get mired down and stuck on everything that's wrong with the world. But in my view, as long as something's wrong, I'm needed, right? Like, so it's a wonderful thing to be able to have a reframe that my life really is about the us, not the you. And to answer the second part of your question, I guess, is where does that fall into my art? Art making it's storytelling in the same way that you're a storyteller and a podcaster. And in the same way that us means something to you, you can't tell stories if you don't have any stories from other people to tell. In the case of art, I think the story that we tell is maybe not always one that's being told. That's why it's so important, is shining a light on the stories that aren't being told or aren't the people aren't feeling comfortable to tell. It's hard topics. It's political, it's religious, it's identity, and the fundamental nature of what is the human experience. And I think art is such a powerful vehicle for that, because everybody approaches, whether it's a painting or a piece of music or a podcast, everybody has a different approach to those, and how they reason with them and reckon with them.
Yeah. Well, and so I hear a couple of things, obviously the importance of the us, and I really appreciate, for me personally, as you described the art, people being able to take it and interpret it however they want, right? Or however they choose, or however they need to. And I've talked to other artists too, who sometimes this conversation, right, is about how sometimes artists can struggle with, this is what I meant, this is what I wanted it to reflect and show and portray. And then other people might interpret it in a different way. And I don't know, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but just the importance of being able to let people take it and pull what they want from it, right? Which is exactly what the podcast is all about, and why I feel so passionate about people telling their stories versus having scripted or preset story sets, because your story that you're going to share with us today is uniquely yours and means something specific to you. And you're not really here to tell anybody else how to live or how to make money or what they're supposed to be doing. But people can listen to your story and take so many things from it that are personal and meaningful to them, right?
They absolutely can. And we all have an opportunity. There's a space always to learn from one another. What the word that comes to mind as you're kind of talking about art is vulnerability. And the way that we as artists feel licensed to be vulnerable with our audience, and the way that the artist has to trust the viewer to take something away from that, because otherwise I don't know how you feel about cursing on your podcast, but really it's like, what the fuck am I doing making art if I'm not trusting the viewer that that they are going to glean something from that. And maybe they don't. I get, my 5-year-old could do that. I get that all the time, right? But I think that says quite a bit about your 5-year-old. I think your 5-year-old's quite enlightened then.
I love that. Okay, Christopher, let's get into your story, because I suspect we're going to hear a lot more about this, or a lot more that this belief and this way of being will influence in your story. We're gonna cover the same 5 questions that we do in every episode, and you and I haven't talked in advance about what you're going to be sharing today. Before we get into the questions and your story, I like to, with each guest, start by saying, as you think ahead to the next 35, 40 minutes or so together, and in your telling of this story, what intention would you have for yourself today?
I think for myself, this is a great question. We're recording for someone else to listen to, but what do I want myself to take from this? I find after I do a podcast or I have a conversation, even with my therapist, let's go with my therapist, we have a 45-minute session together. And what I always take away from it at the end of the day is I'm still thinking about everything that we had discussed. So what's my intention to take away from this is, let's definitely share with the audience. Let's share with the audience something cool and profound or powerful, or, whatever that may be. But I also want to keep thinking about it today and tomorrow and the end of the week, and really sit with that and grow with that, and take all of the parts that ring most true with me, put it in my little briefcase with me, and take it with me through the rest of the week, because there's always something to take away from a wonderful podcast or conversation like this.
I love that. And even just the retelling and reliving can surface new things, or reemphasize, highlight, underline things that aren't new, right? My intention is to support you in this intention of, the retelling of the story and then the taking away. And that in bringing your story out there to other people, that there will be people who will see a little bit of themselves in you. They'll feel more connected to you, a little less alone, and in the best of cases, a little bit more inspired or even empowered to go out and do something that they've been wanting to do.
I hope that too. Let's inspire folks.
Nice. All right, let's jump into the first question. And Christopher, where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
Oh boy. Okay. We're going to start with the big questions first. Have you heard the term lifequake? Are you familiar with that term?
I have heard it, but I haven't studied it.
Okay, so it's a term that I love. It's a lifequake. It's a sudden, unexpected event that shakes up your zeitgeist. And we all have life quakes. They can be good, they can be bad. But I have found myself on the comma many times. And looking back, there's, you can pinpoint a few. There was my 20s. I was way too into the party, man.
Mm.
And that ended pretty epically. So that would have been a life quake. I had a mental health crisis and I attempted suicide.
Mm.
Um, I wouldn't take it back for anything because it really changed me in profound ways. It gave me new insight onto myself coming out of that. Um, the next life quake, of course, which is a shared life quake, was COVID, and all of us went through that one together. But how we experienced it was very individual. Um, and so at that time, it was almost really perfect timing, that little comma in COVID, because it gave me the time and space. Nobody's leaving the house, nobody's going anywhere, doing anything. I had the time and space and freedom to explore my studio 7 days a week, 18 hours a day if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I think most recently, if we're going to talk about a really recent comma, last summer I was riding my bike. I'm very athletic. I love riding my bike. I love climbing. I love hiking. But it was rush hour. I was trying to get home. I was in a yellow light. Boom, got smeared by a car. Very sudden, very unexpected. And it, again, is one of those things that really sucked, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I have learned so much about myself. That happened in July. And I learned so much about myself through the recovery process from that specific incident. And also coming out of that recovery process into where we are today, getting to this point today. You learn about your fortitude and your personal willpower. I am a person, I don't tend to think that I have very many limitations. And so, I was in the wheelchair for the first time in my life. I stayed overnight at a hospital for more than a couple of days for the first time in my life. And what I learned with that specific life quake is you have limitations and you have to be patient with yourself. And oftentimes the mental game and the mental process of healing is so much harder than the physical one. Lots of commas here.
Yeah. Well, can I jump in, and we'll do this from time to time if it's okay with you. And,
Yeah.
and anytime if I jump in, try to reflect something or ask a question, if you're still in the middle of a thought or you're pausing and getting ready to say something else, just push me back out again.
Oh, you're fine.
A couple of things I just wanted to reflect. Like, first of all, and you've really just said it, so I'm just reflecting it back, is that you really kind of take learning from all of the things that happen in your life. I mean, you specifically said this happened, but yet I wouldn't take it back, and this is what I learned from it, right? So that really, I think, shapes what I want to say next, which is, while I hear you say, I don't believe I have limitations, but we do, in a weird way, what I'm interpreting is, but they're also kind of not limitations, because while there might have been a limit to what you could do on a bicycle in rush hour traffic, and there were some really significant and unpleasant consequences of that, how you navigated that experience, the recovery, the learning, the reflecting, and then deciding where you want to go next, that's still very much movement, right? Which kind of, in its own sort of way, is not a limit, right? I'm taking some really drastic liberties here with how I think about this, but I guess what I'm taking away selfishly is that as long as you're open to what you can do next and how you can get through things and where you might go after, then that kind of redefines what limits are. I don't know. I'll throw that back at you. What are your thoughts about that, or what does that mean to you? This is your story.
I think that's actually a great point that you're raising. And for myself and everyone else, if the listener takes away one thing from today, it's that the limitation is mental, period. Um,
Mm.
Retraining your brain, retraining one's brain in general. Um, you can, for example, you can sit in a wheelchair at home, stuck. Um, the day before you were riding 25 miles on your bike. It takes just as much effort, if not more, to go, woe is me, woe is me. I got hit by a car. I'm in a lot of pain. Everything sucks. I can't leave the house. As it does to make the effort to retrain your brain and go, what can I learn from this situation? And if that is what you choose to embrace, then to your point, there really aren't limitations.
Mm-hmm.
There, I'm getting acutely aware of my age now. I'm not that old. For any, our viewers can't see us today. They can't hear us, but I'm not that old. I'm 34, and I think life is a series of mindsets. And in my 20s,
Mm-hmm.
my mindset was very, I am limitless in the sense that physically I am invincible. In my 30s, what I'm starting to learn, I hope, is that my limit is my own ability to reason within or without of a situation. So it makes me really excited to see, okay, well, what does life have for me in my 40s? Will I make it that far?
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for you, right? And I think what I'm kind of what's shaping up for me is like when it comes to limits, am I limitless? Is it the thing that's or am I limited? Is it the thing that's limited? I just think there's a lot of different ways you can look at it, which is what you're sharing with us here. Christopher, tell us more. If you wanted to talk about the bicycle accident, tell us a little bit more about what it was like to actually sit on that comma. So when this happened, like what was happening for you? What was going through your mind? What were you thinking and feeling?
Well, so this is a weird one. I like looking back, the whole situation was just weird. Um, I had a day. It was quite a day. And so when especially me when I'm angry or I'm feeling frustrated with the day that I'm having, stuff like that, I have a lot of kinetic energy. And whether that manifests in I'm going to go in the studio and I'm going to use all my kinetic energy to paint and move around and express that somehow, or in this case, it was a beautiful day, absolutely gorgeous day in July, and I was very frustrated. I was very angry that day, so I took my bike out, and nothing makes me happier than going outside on my bike. And you just like flying. You feel like you're flying. You can go as fast and as far as your body will let you. And that's what I
Mhm.
did. So my other ambition is I love riding my bike so much, and I'm also very competitive. I love a good competition. And
Mhm.
it at that time I had been hoping to compete in a bike race in September. It was my first bike race. I was very excited about it. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to go out there. I'm going to go as hard and fast as I can. So that was really my mindset. And that's where I was before everything happened. In the moment, everybody goes, oh, you're going to see your life flash before your eyes. You're going to, all these things are going to happen to you. Um, the light was yellow. I was in the intersection on a yellow, and it had turned just like that. Hopefully the listeners can hear the snap of my finger, but if they can't, it really turned
Mhm.
so fast that I had no idea really what was happening. And a gal on her cell phone just lurched right through the light, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful every single day to be alive. Um, and at that time, after, you kind of, everything happens so quickly, it's like in flashes, where if you had asked me in that moment what color the car was that had hit me, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. It was only in retrospect when your adrenaline stops rushing and everything slows down that you can really start to go back through your head and go, oh my God, what in the world did I just go through? Um, in that moment, I felt, oh, okay, well, this wasn't so bad. Just hit me. I'm fine. I'm still alive. I'm wearing my helmet and everything's good. But I didn't have a real sense of alarm until I tried to stand. And I wasn't in pain. I mean, I was in pain, right? You have road rash or whatever, your body aches, but I wasn't in pain at that exact moment after getting hit. But I did try to stand up. And I realized when I stood up, attempted to stand up, that my legs weren't working. And I thought, oh God, I can handle, I can handle if my legs are broken. I can handle if I've broken a bone or something, but please, I can't handle if I'm paralyzed. Unfortunately, that's not what came out of it. But in the moment, that was exactly what was running through my head. The other thing that was running through my head was, my husband is going to be so mad at me. My husband is going to be pissed, man. And the wonderful thing about my husband is he's so sweet and tender. He's very sensitive. I don't know if you're into astrology, but he's a Cancer. He's a water sign. And he approaches the world with this kind of childlike sense of openness and vulnerability. It's really beautiful. But in moments of intense stress, you can also apply that as well. And so I was very, yeah, you get where I'm going.
I've known a Cancer for many years in a similar type of situation, and yes, sweet and bubbly until they're not.
Yes. And yes. So in the back of the ambulance, as they're cutting off my clothes, I'm trying to call my husband, and I'm the one trying to stay calm. And when he finally answers, I said, "Hi, babe. How are you?" And he said, "I'm at work. What's going on? What's wrong?" And I said, I just want you to know I'm okay, but I'm going to the hospital. So I'm very much trying to keep it together. And he goes, "What's wrong? What happened to you?" And I said, "I got hit by a car while I was riding my bike." And he said, "Well, I'm at work. I can't do anything. I can't leave right now. What do you need me to do?" And I said, "Well, after work, just finish this haircut that you're doing." He's a hairstylist. "Finish the haircut you're doing. This is where I'm going. I'm going to Denver Health, and just meet me there." And he was like, "Oh God. Okay, I'll be there." And the whole time I'm just trying to stay very calm. So I think that was the very first moment that I knew this whole situation was going to be very bizarre and not like other.
Yeah.
Not like other traumatic incidents.
It's fascinating, right? Like when you are, how do I want to say this? Like when you go through this, if you're intact and alert and have your faculties and so forth, like the types of things that will go through your mind and the negotiations and the who needs to and the what the and all that sort of thing, it's really fascinating, isn't it? And meanwhile, you don't yet know, what is the prognosis, what's going to happen, what's happening with my legs and so forth, but very much still focused on other people, right? And yeah.
Right, the us of it. So we finally made it to the hospital in the ambulance. I handle extreme stress with humor. I just think humor is great. It's disarming. It levels the playing field, especially if you're dealing with angry people or people under stress who have a lot going on, EMTs, nurses, doctors, for example. But also just for myself, as long as I can take the seriousness of everything down, then I can mentally handle it all right. And I found myself, once they finally got me into a bed, I found myself thinking, this isn't just a one-way trauma. Yes, it's I'm physically traumatized. I'm the one who got hit by the car. But it occurred to me at that time that this wasn't just my trauma. I'm positive I hope, that the gal who hit me when she was driving, um, she probably didn't wake up that morning and go,
Hmm.
oh, yeah, I'm just going to go hit a cyclist today. And so my next questions for the police officer and the nurses and everybody who had, they started seeing photos and stuff of the scene. I was intensely worried about her. And I said, is she okay? I mean, what's wrong with her car? Is her mindset all right? Like, what's going on with her? And they just kept telling me, don't worry about
Hmm.
that. Don't worry about that. And I said, why wouldn't I worry about this? This,
Hmm.
there's two people involved in this situation. Is she okay? Um, and they were like, put that down. We got to move on. We got to diagnostics and stuff. And so, of course, the final thing that passed through my mind was, oh my God, where's my bike? Is my bike okay? And that was really that's what panicked me, because my bike, I have a beautiful bike. It's my favorite possession. And they said, your bike is fine. Everything's going to be fine. And it was just it was very bizarre.
Yeah.
Um,
But yet I just have to acknowledge, like you said earlier, this emphasis on it's not just let me check in with myself, but you're thinking about others, you're thinking about your husband, you're thinking about the other person, and even in a way, your bike, while it's a possession, like your attention goes outward, is what I'm noticing. And there's
yeah,
this kind of like, let me assess the whole situation. Christopher, let me jump in with a second question, and then you can go back and forth and continue to build on the story as needed. The second question is, as you look back at this comma that you were sitting on or experiencing, what did it create for you?
that's very broad. Do you want to narrow that down, or you want to let me riff?
Riff,
Okay.
go for it. Yeah.
Uh, what it created for me, two things. First, that feeling of, oh, I am not invincible. Life very much has an expiration date, and today could have been mine. And that is something that has stuck with me to this day. It doesn't matter if I wake up and I have had the worst week ever at work, and I know that whatever I go into the office today, and there's probably going to be something terrible happening. I know that I woke up this morning and I'm breathing and I've got a roof and I'm alive. And that was probably
Mhm.
the first and most lasting thing. But I think the second thing, um, and this really carried through the entire recovery process, was I have to figure out how to make this work. My life, that's this. I have to figure out how to make my life work for me, even though it does not look anything like it did the day before. Um, I had never been in a wheelchair before. Um,
Mhm.
I hate hospitals. I have a lot of really bad associations and experiences with hospitals, as I'm sure most people do who have been to one, whether it's for a family member or themselves. Um, and there's something about hospitals that I hate. And the first night, I stayed 2 nights. The first night that I stayed in the hospital, I was miserable. I didn't sleep. It's not my space. It's not my home. It smells different. It's not my bedding, my sheets, all of that, all of that.
Mhm.
And I felt very uncomfortable because it's a place of suffering. At least this part of the hospital that I was in, it's a place of suffering. Um, and I had made up my mind very early on that I was going to stay in the hospital as little time as possible. I didn't want to be there. And frankly, I felt that if I'm not going to die, which I wasn't, if I'm not going to die, then I want to be at home. Um, we did a series, they do the whole battery of tests and diagnostics and things. And
Mhm.
what I came out with, unfortunately, I wasn't paralyzed. This was fabulous. We were about one vertebra, one lower vertebra, two vertebra maybe, away from being paralyzed. Um, and
Mm.
instead, thank goodness, I shattered my pubic bone clean in half, kind of the socket that your femur goes into. It broke that straight in
Mhm.
half. Very clean break, which was a very fortunate
Mm.
thing. I shattered, well, they don't call it a shatter. It was a displacement of my tailbone and lower spine. Because
Mm.
I hit the ground at such an angle and then you kind of roll like in a film. Um, which is why ultimately I wasn't paralyzed, because I did a roll instead of a hard.
Okay.
Broke the top of my iliac crest, broke my wrist, broke a little piece of my hand and my arm. So there were quite a few breaks, but nothing life threatening. And looking back, it's just miraculous. But this is what I had to work with, and so the entire process from then on, how do I get out of this freaking hospital, and how do I move on with my life? So they kept asking me, we really think it would be wise to do surgery on you. And I was like, no, I, I will not do surgery, period. There's no need for it. I had enough time in the hospital bed at that time to start researching all of these little breaks and fractures and things that I had undergone. And um, specifically when healing the pubic bone, it's very much the kind of fracture that active people endure. And the best way to heal a pubic fracture is by staying active.
Mm.
Um, Otherwise, your body tries to fuse the femur to the pubic bone.
Mm.
And so you develop arthritis, you lose that mobility, the soft tissue goes bad, all that stuff. It's very bad. And I knew I did not want surgery. I didn't need surgery. It was advised against. So after telling them probably 5, 6 times, I will not have surgery, stop asking me.
Mm-hmm.
They said, fine, you can leave, but you basically have to prove your way out of the hospital. So before you leave, we need to know that you are going to be able to independently get into a wheelchair, use the restroom. You're going to have to be able to stand up, make food for yourself when nobody's home to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, I'm competitive. I like a challenge. I can prove myself out of this hospital. So I stayed another day. And that night, finally got some sleep. But I woke up very early that morning, which is also unusual. And at 5 a.m., I don't know if anybody, I don't know, I'm sure they have, but if you've seen Kill Bill,
Mm.
when Beatrix Kiddo is in the back of the truck and she's going, wiggle your left toe, wiggle your left toe. And finally she does, and okay, cool, now I can go. She knows she's going to be okay. I knew that if I could sit upright, I would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so around 5 a.m. until the nurse would come in and ask for breakfast around 7, I was practicing how to sit upright. And right around 6:30, 6:45 in the morning, I sat upright. And 10 or 15 minutes later, the nurse came in, and I was sitting there waiting for her to take my breakfast order.
Mm. That had to be a pleasant surprise for her, I would imagine, as much as it was for you.
She was like, good morning. You're up.
What was that like? I mean, that hour and a half of practicing and really kind of putting yourself into the work of proving yourself. What was that like? I'm just curious.
It was, I mean, it sounds silly, but it was kind of existential, because it was kind of like, well, all you have to do is sit up. But then
Mm-hmm.
you realize mechanically, all you have to do is sit up. Um, and so in that moment, that hour and a half or so of figuring out how am I going to sit up so I can navigate the rest of life, was the only job that I have right now. The only task at hand is to figure this situation out. And there isn't room to focus on anything else. You have to figure out, how am I just going to sit up in this hospital bed?
Mm.
There was no frustration. There was no anger. It was just figure it out.
It's amazing, and I think it says so much about you that you could stay that present and that focused. I can speak for myself. I believe I can speak on behalf of others that I have talked to. It can become very easy in your mind to jump way past this day or two in the hospital and start thinking about next week, next month, next year, and what if, what if, what if. And yet I see you, I see two things. I see you kind of shifting back and forth between outward focus and inward focus. And in this moment, this particular example, staying really, really present. What allowed you to do that?
Uh, Necessity. Um, if we kind of zoom out a little bit, I think you and I can both agree probably that culturally we tend to fixate on everything, everywhere, all at once, all the
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in many ways, especially when we're talking to other people, oh, I'm so anxious, I'm so worked up, this and stress. We talk about our stress a lot. And I think that a lot of that comes from the fact that we're just not present. Um, Frankly, I don't know that one can be present 100% of the time, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know that a lot of people know how to be present at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're going through our lives and we're driving to the supermarket, but we're already thinking about what am I making for dinner tomorrow? You haven't even bought the groceries for tonight's meal, but you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking about what am I going to make for dinner tomorrow? What meeting am I going to have, with the CEO or whatever it is? You're thinking about that. So you're kind of on autopilot throughout your entire life all the time. And it it's a push and pull. There's a healthy level of that kind of detachment. We
Mm-hmm.
have to think about the future. We have to plan for the future. How do we engage with that? Um, that anxiety, that stress, that you know, the need to be thinking about it versus sending yourself into a tailspin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Between um, emotion and reaction, there's always a space to take a breath. And I think this period of time, this accident, and the recovery very much was the space between the emotion and the reaction is the breath that I needed. Um, yeah. And how does that relate to the global perspective that I also like to keep, the us part of that perspective? If I can't make the space in my life to take the breath that I need to be present, there's no way I can serve others. And there's no way that I can be an effective person or leader or artist or any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is, there's that tension, that push pull.
Yeah. Let me ask the third question. I feel like you're already kind of taking us there. And so you can add whatever else you'd like to this. And the third question is, what have you learned about yourself as a result of sitting on this comma?
Oh my gosh. That I'm incredibly impatient. I I learned that I'm a lot tougher than I thought I was.
Mm.
Um, for someone like myself who is as active as I am, and I think vital to this observation as well is that I am a painter. I paint with my hands, and I one of my left arm and my little bone in my hand was fractured.
Mm.
Which even though I'm right hand dominant, that you don't realize you hold your paint tray with that, you stabilize the canvas with that. You use your left hand even if you're a right hand dominant painter. And so this toughness wasn't just um, now I'm physically limited. I'm in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I in the moment it was very embarrassing. I wet myself on the first night of being home because you can't move fast. And
Mm-hmm.
I am a person who is used to jumping up off of the sofa. I go and I work out and I lift weights in the morning. I go onto my bike. I'm very physical. But the first night of being home, I couldn't move fast enough to even get to the wheelchair to use the restroom. And it was very embarrassing and humiliating at that time. Um, and adding into that, the limitation of I'm homebound, I'm wheelchair bound, and I can't even create
Mm.
in the way that I normally would create. And so there is an inflection point there. There's a choice in that moment of, do I succumb to the misery, woe is me, all of those negative feelings, or do I spend just as much energy and effort finding the adaptation and
Mm.
and evolving the way that I move, the way that I work, the way that I paint, all of those things, right? You can stay stuck on that comma, or you can puzzle your way out of the situation. And I think that toughness, why I was so surprised by that toughness is because I like doing things a certain way all the time.
Mhm.
There's one aspect of my nature that's very adventurous, very experimental. But when it comes to the business of just living life, there's a rhythm that I like. And I'm sure there's a
Mm.
rhythm to your life that you like. You like
Mhm.
eating at a certain time or whatever it is, right? And so the toughness for me came in adapting and figuring out, how do I make the bed? How do I vacuum the floor? If I can't work out, if I can't pump iron, how do I adapt my workout and my fitness flow to a wheelchair routine?
Mhm.
Um, Frankly, how do I relearn how to walk?
Mhm.
And that's something that people take for granted every single day. I think they take for granted the fact that you just pop out of bed in the morning and you walk. Um, for the first time in my life since childbirth, I couldn't walk.
Mhm.
Um, and what was funny, because part of my daily rhythm is making sure the home is clean. I like a clean space. Part of relearning how to walk was actually also part of relearning how to vacuum.
Mm.
And so I would have my wheelchair, and my wheelchair would stabilize me, and I would vacuum, and then I would take a step, and then I would vacuum again, and I would take a step. And in a few days, I think it was within a week and a half, 2 weeks, I didn't need the wheelchair anymore to take a step. I hated the wheelchair. You got to know this.
Mm.
The wheelchair for me was it came to symbolize everything that I hated about all the limitations and emotions and craziness of that time. It became the wheelchair. And
Mhm.
so the first goal was get out of the hospital bed so I can go home. The second goal was get rid of this damn wheelchair.
Mhm.
And so within 2 weeks, I was out of the wheelchair and I was done with it. And I won't ever forget calling the wheelchair company in the morning and saying, "Hey, what time can you come pick this thing up? Because I'm done renting it. I'm tired of it."
Mhm.
And that was a triumphant moment for me, was getting rid of the wheelchair.
It sounds like you also really had a strong motivation. I mean, you really leaned into this. You really took the initiative. It's very clear. I mean, as you've told us, that you had a lot of feelings about this. You were feeling a lot of ways about this, and yet I see you pushing forward. I see you challenging yourself.
Thank you. Yeah. That's all you can do. That's really all you can do. Um, I knew that the alternative was worse. I knew that if I didn't self-motivate and place benchmarks and milestones to achieve, you can fall into this trap, whatever you want to call it. You can fall into this disability um, that should be temporary, and it can become a lifelong disability
Hmm.
if you don't work at it.
Hmm.
I think you and I, probably the folks listening at home, everyone knows someone who something very terrible happened, and that person, it doesn't matter if it was physical or mental or what, that person's life changed, and they never changed it back.
Hmm.
And I didn't
Or
want,
changed it forward.
right, and I didn't want to ever see myself not living a life where I'm thriving and active and all of those
Hmm.
things. So the alternative was worse, Do I endure the pain of learning how to walk and vacuum and being broken, or do I endure the pain of this is my permanent reality? I'm going to be disabled in a way that is lasting. I didn't want
Mhm.
that.
And it's choosing, right? Like you said earlier in the conversation, and I won't quote your words accurately, I'm sure, but something about like you can choose. It's the amount of effort you put into something, right? Like it's going to be equally as difficult to sit and suffer and to worry and stress and fret and anticipate and that sort of thing as the difficulty of working through my physical therapy routine, challenging myself to get back to walking and so forth.
Yeah.
Let me ask the fourth question here. This story that you've been sharing with us is really recent. The fourth question is, what has changed for you, or what is changing for you as a result of sitting on this comma?
The most lasting change has been the mindset and perspective shift of um, the gratitude, the gratitude I feel for life and living.
Mm,
Um, I've said it a million times already, and I'll continue to say it until I'm blue in the face, is I could have or I should have been dead.
mm,
And it was completely unexpected. And it's probably just as surprising and unexpected that I'm alive today. Uh, and so being able to frame everything in my life now with gratitude and a sense of, whatever I'm going through right now is kind of sucks, right? Work really sucked. The meal I was going to eat this afternoon for lunch spoiled overnight in the fridge, and
mm,
now I have, but these are minor inconveniences. And I found that, especially in my 20s, it's a very self centered existence. And there isn't necessarily a lot of thank you and I'm thankful for this. There's a lot of, well, what's in it for me? Where's mine? Um, what can you do for me? There was not a lot of gratitude in my life.
mm.
And now, I mean, I stop 5 times a day and I just think, oh my gosh, this is I'm so grateful for whatever. I'm so grateful that I woke up this morning. I'm so grateful for you know, my roof doesn't have a leak. It's random things.
Hmm. The gratitude sounds powerful, and it's fun to watch you. I'm obviously at a different point in my life than you are. You're in your 30s. I have been in my 30s, right? But it's fun, and I think a lot of people, we do this as human beings. We look at other people in different age brackets, and especially if it's one behind where we currently are. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that, or oh yeah, I can't wait to see what they're going to. But I think what I want to acknowledge is the reflection on your part of this is what I was like in my 20s. This is what I am like in my 30s. This is how it used to be. This is how it is. I notice again, that awareness, that focus, that sense of observation seems like it serves you very well.
Thank you. I agree with that.
Let me ask the last question. And this is going to be as brief or detailed as you want. Question five is, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
Well, I guess we're gonna, if we're gonna bring it all the way down to the very beginning of what do we want viewers and listeners to, sorry, I keep saying viewers. What do we want listeners to take away from this, right? Um, I want a listener to leave this going, getting off the comma means going through something tough and being stronger and wiser for it.
Mhm.
Because too often we go through something tough and we don't see the wisdom or growth potential of whatever that tough thing is. And that isn't to downplay or say that everything is rosy and everyone going through something tough should always find the silver lining. That can be very patronizing, and that's not what I'm attempting to convey. Um,
Mhm.
I think if we truly, in every sense, get off the comma, It's that the sentence, if we're talking about punctuation, literally, the comma, the sentence is finished, and whatever comes after that sentence, it has the wisdom that you've gained from whatever came before that.
Hmm. Hmm. Ooh, I hear a lot of different kind of analogies, metaphors, storytelling around how people interpret the metaphor off the comma, right?
Yeah,
And I really love and appreciate how you just framed it, right? Which is by the time you get to the period, the story is all the richer because of the comma, right? And what came
right.
before the comma or what happened as a result of the comma is equally important to the finishing of the story. So that's really awesome. I had to comment on that.
Of course, yeah.
Christopher, all podcasts must come to an end, unfortunately. And I know there's certainly much more you could share with us that we won't be able to talk about here. But for people who do want to reach out to you, connect with you, maybe learn more about your story, other stories that you have, or just, reach out to you if they choose. Where can people find you? Obviously, I'll put all the links in the info in the show notes. Where could people connect with you if they wanted to?
Yeah, I love connecting with new people. You can find me on Instagram, it's christopher.lafleur.arts, in the description, as you said. Or you can send me an email through my website, christopherlafleurarts.com. Um, I love meeting new friends. I do.
Nice.
I absolutely do.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. Well, then that invitation is there. And the last thing, something we do in every episode is a section I like to call acknowledgments, because obviously this podcast is about giving people an opportunity to share their stories, lifting people up, lifting up voices, right? And I feel like your story wouldn't be complete if we didn't give you an opportunity to do that for others. And so with this section, it's an opportunity for you to give a voice to boost, lift up, promote others in your circle. And that could be organizations or causes, it could be other creators, it could be loved ones. Basically, anyone in your circle that you want to give a voice to. So, who would you like to acknowledge today?
I think that's a great question. First, you, of course, thanks for doing your podcast.
Thank you.
And I believe our mutual friend Rissa is the one who introduced us. So big
Hmm.
shout out to Rissa. But I think what I'd like to acknowledge and put a spotlight on today is the nonprofit that I work for, Colorado Health Network. It's the oldest and largest HIV/AIDS nonprofit testing, prevention, and advocacy organization in Colorado. Um, I've always felt a deep connection to the mission. I don't know why. I don't have a relationship to HIV personally. It's the work that Colorado Health Network does and has done is just so powerful. It resonates, and it always has. But you know, in this whatever timeline we're living in, with the budget cuts and funding, and it is hitting social work and healthcare nonprofits in a big way. And I would like to shout out the work that Colorado Health Network does because, you know, we can talk about numbers, we can talk about, news headlines and oh, savings of this, budgets being cut by this. Those numbers are human.
Hmm.
Those dollars are meals that people need. They are tests and medicines and treatments that real life human beings rely on. And so I can't speak highly enough of the work that Colorado Health Network does in the community. And I guess a general appeal to everyone who's listening, please support organizations like Colorado Health Network. Maybe you're listening in another state or another country. And if you don't have the capacity or ability to give to Colorado Health Network, find an organization that's doing profound work in your own community and give back to them. Give your time, donate food, uh, find somebody to help because right now we really need each other.
Hmm. I love that. And you said something that I often will say, if this organization isn't in your neighborhood, go and find one similar to it, or another important organization in your neighborhood. And I just have to take a second to self-reference because you do work in nonprofit and you've obviously spoken about a nonprofit that matters to you. And you talked about the importance of others. It continues to occur to me that it's like, there's a reason why so much work falls on nonprofits. And if it's not just rewinding the reel to say, oh, well, we need to make sure that these nonprofits have enough funding. Also, we as a people need to reflect on why is it that this work falls on nonprofits in the first place, right?
Exactly.
So this isn't just a matter of funding for nonprofits. There's a bigger story for us to all inspect here, which is why does it have to fall on nonprofits? Why is it that nonprofits have to operate very lean and mean? Why is it that all the human care and human dignity and human support comes from these organizations and not the organizations where most of the money is? I'm just saying. That's me on a platform.
We could talk that one an entire episode of a podcast, my friend.
Or start another podcast, right?
We could start an entirely other podcast.
Well, something tells me you and I are going to have a little bit of an after conversation after we hit the stop button on the recording. Christopher, thank you so much for coming with us today, sharing your story, joining our community of storytellers, and for just allowing yourself to be open and relive the experience as you said you were going to in your intention.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful week ahead.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks, Paul.
What an honor it is for me to witness these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way too. Think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. Surprises can reveal themselves to you when you do this. And if you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. Let's spread the word. Let's continue to build connection. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast here on this platform and social media at Off the Comma. And feel free to comment and interact with these posts and episodes. Check out my website for workshops, events, and my sponsor community. I'm covering the costs of production by curating my own sponsors who align with our vision. Be sure to check them out. They're all powerful people and businesses. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.